I'm really glad you guys are here. We're starting a new series today, and I want you guys to contemplate. I thought about doing like an out loud quiz, but the last time I did that, everything turned to pandemonium because everybody answered at the same time, and should have you raise your hands because we are back in school, right? But I just want you to just think in your head. I want you to think about this. What are some things, what are some things that you know about Jesus? Just kind of go through the Rolodex for just a minute in your mind of some things that you know about Jesus. I was thinking about this. We know things like he was born of a virgin. He lived in the Galilee region about 2,000 years ago. He was the son of a carpenter. He is the son of God. He is God. He did miracles. He taught amazing things. He died on a cross for our sins. He rose from the dead. He's coming back again one day to set things right, to make things right. We know a lot about Jesus. Right? In fact, I think regardless of if you grew up in church or not, you could list out probably a dozen or more things that you know about Jesus. You know about some things that he taught. You know about some miracles that he did. You know about some things concerning his character and stuff. And all of those things that we know about Jesus are extremely important. It's important that we know the right things about Jesus. But I have another question that I want you to think about that's a little different. It's kind of a twist on that question, and that's this. Who is Jesus, really? Who is Jesus, really? Now, what's fascinating about this question is if you were to go out on the street and you were just to interview random people, you would get a bunch of different answers to this question of who is Jesus, really? It's just it's a little bit of a different question, like I said, because it's not about what we know about Jesus and what he did and all that kind of stuff, but about who he really is. And a few months ago, I was looking for some books to read that would be good for my soul, because sometimes I read books for information, and sometimes I like to just read some things that would be good for my soul. And so I did what all of us did when we're trying to find something. I Googled it. What are great books for my soul? And I got a bunch of different lists, and one book appeared on a bunch of different lists that I was looking at on Google, and it was this one right here, Gentle and Lowly. I know you can read that from where you're sitting, right? After I thought this morning, I should probably put it up on the screen. They can see it better, but I just want you to squint. Gentle and Lowly with the little subtitle, because all books have subtitles, right? The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers. Now, it wasn't the main title that grabbed my attention, Gentle and Lowly. It was the little subtitle, The Heart of Jesus for Sinners and Sufferers. And the reason it grabbed my attention is because if you're like me, you know that you are a sinner. And you know that life is full of suffering. And the whole idea of the heart of Christ, the heart of Jesus, for those of us who are sinners kind of grabbed my attention, and I started reading it, and I was like, Liz, you need to read this book. So I had to download the library version and buy the hard copy for her, and so this isn't even mine, it's hers. But it just stood out, it jumped out to me as something that, this is something we should talk about here at Hub City. The heart of Jesus, the heart of Christ, for those of us who are sinners and sufferers. So for the next few weeks, I want to use some inspiration from this book, which I highly recommend. You should order it and read it. You can get a used copy on abebooks.com for pretty cheap. And talk about who is Jesus really. And I want to focus on the heart of Jesus. Who is Jesus really? For two main reasons. The first reason I think this is important is because my job as the pastor of Hub City Church is to make disciples so that you can make disciples. Like my goal, my job description is to grow you into followers of Jesus. And we've talked about what a disciple is. A disciple is just someone who's in the process of learning to be with Jesus so they can become like Jesus, like we sang a few minutes ago, so they can do what Jesus would do if Jesus were them, right? And I think that if we look and learn about the heart of Jesus for us, and what Jesus is really like, then we know more about what we should be like, what kind of heart we should have as his followers. But there's another reason why I want us to talk about this that's equally important, and that is that I think a lot of us know so much about Jesus, but we struggle with knowing who Jesus really is, his heart, what he's like. See, I want us, I want you, I want me, I want us to know Jesus. In Philippians 3:10, Paul makes this statement, I want to know Christ. I want to have this intimate knowledge of Jesus that is so deep that I can relate to him in his death and in his resurrection, that I just know him deeply. And so I want us to learn the heart of Jesus. I love this quote from Dane Ortland in the book. He says, "You might know that Christ died and rose again on your behalf to rinse you clean of all your sin. But do you know his deepest heart for you?" Two different things. Do you live with an awareness not only of his atoning work for your sinfulness, but also of his longing heart amid your sinfulness? And then he goes on. He says, it's one thing to know the doctrines of the incarnation and the atonement and the 100 other vital doctrines. It is another more searching matter to know his heart for you. And so that's what I want us to talk about, his heart for us, the heart of Jesus for you and for me. And I want us to begin with what Jesus actually says about his heart. And what's fascinating is that in the 89 chapters that make up the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus only mentions something about his heart one time. And the one place that Jesus talks about his heart is a very familiar passage that we've talked about before, but we're going to revisit it. We're actually going to read it in a translation that I rarely use. It's going to be the ESV translation because I love the depth of the wording of the ESV with this passage. But let's just read it. Let me read it to you. It says this: "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Notice that in the one place where Jesus himself gives us a glimpse into the core of who he really is, we're not told that he is serious and demanding in heart. We're not told that he's exalted and dignified in heart. We're not even told that he's joyful and generous in heart. Instead, Jesus himself claims that he is gentle and lowly in heart. Now, I want to say something about the heart because I think there's some confusion for those of us who live in 2026 about the heart, because the way the New Testament and the Old Testament talk about the heart is completely different from the way that we talk about the heart. See, with the way the Old Testament and the New Testament talk about the heart, it's not talking about your emotional life. That's what we usually think when we think about our heart, right? It's our emotional life. That's why when you hear somebody say, follow your heart, which is the worst and dumbest and most ridiculous advice you could ever give someone, follow your heart. They're saying follow your emotions. And the reason why that's dumb advice is because your emotions are going to change in 5 minutes, right? And so you're going to be just bouncing around like a rubber band. That's not what the heart is when it comes to Scripture. When the Old Testament and the New Testament talk about heart, it means this, that the heart, according to the Bible, the heart is the central animating center of all that we do. Not just your feelings or your emotions. It's the central animating center of all that we do. That is, as far as the Bible's concerned, the heart is not just a part of who we are, like our emotions are just a part of who we are. They're not all of who we are. But according to the Bible, the heart is not just a part of who we are. It is at the center of who we are. Like our hearts define us. That's why they can direct us, right? Our hearts are what make us the unique human beings that each of us are. See, our hearts are who we really are. And when Jesus tells us what his heart is, what animates him most deeply, what is most true of him, he tells us that he is gentle and lowly of heart. We'll talk about each of those terms in just a minute, but I want to go through the entire passage and kind of unpack it together. Like I said, most of us in here are familiar with this passage, but I think this is the best invitation from Jesus in the entire Bible, so it's worth going over again. But he begins with this invitation. He says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden." See, Jesus invites those who labor and who are heavy laden, like those who are weary and those who are burdened. He invites all of those who are carrying heavy loads to come to him. He tells us something fascinating here, that we don't have to unburden ourselves of all of our baggage to come to him. We don't have to put ourselves together to come to him. We don't have to clean up to come to him. We don't have to get our act together to come to him. We don't have to get all of our ducks in a row to come to him. We don't have to believe all the right things to come to him. In fact, what Jesus says here is that it's our very burdens and weariness and heavy ladenness and all those things that weigh us down that actually qualifies us to come to him, which I think is fascinating. And implied here is that if we want to experience the gentle and lowly heart of Jesus, which we're going to get to in just a minute, we're going to have to come to him first. And this invitation is open to all of us. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and who are heavy laden. And then he promises something fascinating. He says, and I will give you, what's that word? Rest. Something all of us want, something all of us need. Jesus promises to give us rest from labor, rest from burdens, rest from working to earn his favor, rest from working to try and get on his good side or earn enough points so that we're on the positive side of the column when it comes to eternity, right? Jesus promises to give us rest from all of that. I love the message paraphrase. That's funny. Just a little jet lag. I'm not responsible for whatever comes out of my mouth, because right now it's bedtime. But because that's where I was. But I want to read the message paraphrase for just a minute because I love it. It says this: are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Isn't that what we all want, right? We want to recover our life. We want to take a real rest. We just want to be like, and be okay with stuff, right? We don't want to carry all the baggage that we carry with us all the time. We don't want our lives to be dictated by our feelings or by our performance. We want rest, and Jesus promises us rest. But then he offers another invitation. He starts off by saying, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. But then he gives this invitation next. He says this: take my yoke upon you and learn from me. There's actually two invitations there. First one, take my yoke upon you. And the second one is learn from me. Now, you probably know this, but in case you didn't know this, a yoke, this isn't a yolk, which is part of an egg. This is a yoke. I know that sometimes kids get confused, so I just want to clarify that because I know the quality of the intellect in this room. But he says that a yoke is a heavy crossbar that's laid on oxen to force them to drag farming equipment across a field together. That's what a yoke is, right? It's basically this piece of equipment that unites two entities, that unites them so that they can work together to accomplish a goal. And Jesus invites us to attach ourselves to him, to yoke ourselves upon him, to take his yoke upon us and unite ourselves with him. And then he invites us, secondly, to learn from him. And this isn't just learning things about Jesus. This is actually learning how to live. That's what this means here. We are to learn from him how we are to do our lives. We are to learn from him how we are to live as his followers. We are to learn from him how we are to treat one another and all the other stuff that goes through life, how to manage our finances, how to manage our time, all this stuff. We are to learn from Jesus how to live. He invites us to do these two things, to attach ourselves, unite ourselves up to him, and so that we can move forward, and to learn from him how we are to live the life that he has given us. And then we get to his heart. He tells us why we should accept his invitation. I mean, it's a pretty good invitation, but if you're just, looking at this objectively, you're like, why should I accept your invitation to follow you, Jesus? Why should I take your yoke upon me? Why should I attach myself to you? Why should I align my life up under your teachings? Well, this is why, Jesus says, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. The reason why we should accept Jesus' invitation is because of who Jesus is. He is gentle and lowly at heart. I want to talk about each of these. First word, gentle, can also be translated as meek or humble. In fact, other translations say that he is gentle and humble in heart, or meek and humble in heart, and things like that. It can be translated as humble. It really means that Jesus isn't trigger happy, that he's not harsh, that he's not reactionary, that he's not easily angered or exasperated. Now, you know people who are trigger happy. And you know people whose immediate response is to be harsh or to be reactionary, but Jesus isn't like that. Instead, when it says that he is gentle, it's saying that Jesus is the most understanding person in the universe. I just want to pause for a minute. We're going to come back to this in a couple weeks. But that means that he understands your sinfulness. He's gentle. He's understanding. Now, I can't grasp my head around how Jesus, the most sinless person that has ever lived, can be understanding of us, the most sinful people that have ever lived, but it's true. Jesus is gentle. He is the most understanding person in the universe. The posture that is most natural to him is not the pointed finger, but the open arms. He's understanding. Isn't that amazing? Jesus is gentle in heart. He has a heart that is gentle. Have you ever been around someone who you would just say, man, their heart is gentle? They're just gentle. That's how Jesus is. It also tells us that he's lowly. Lowly, that word is sometimes translated as humble in the New Testament. But when we think of humble, we think of like it as a virtue, like humility is a virtue. But that's not what this word is talking about here. It refers to humility in the sense of destitution, or being pushed down by life, or being forced downward by life circumstances. It refers to those who are socially unimpressive. Other words, people who are from Hub City Church. It refers to those who are not the life of the party, but who instead cause the guy that's the host of the party to cringe when they show up, right? That's what it means to be lowly here. And when Jesus says that he is lowly in heart, he's communicating something fascinating, that he is accessible and approachable. He's accessible and approachable. Now just remember who Jesus was, the Son of God, the most perfect person that ever lived, the one who came to represent God and show us what God is like. And the people of Jesus' day couldn't understand how someone who was supposed to be like God could hang out with people who were not like God. But what we read, like in Luke chapter 15, verse 1, was that all the sinners and tax collectors loved to gather around and listen to Jesus teach. Why did they love to gather around and listen to Jesus teach? Because he was accessible and approachable. He was lowly. He didn't position himself above people so that they had to look up to him, even though he is the Son of God that we should probably look up to. Jesus instead positioned himself at eye level with us and made himself approachable and accessible to us. I love that. Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart. From the mouth of Jesus, this is who he is. He is tender and open and welcoming and accommodating and understanding and willing. And I read somebody said, if you could just give one description of who Jesus is, it would be honoring to Jesus to use his own words to say that Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart. Like if you were to be asked on the side of the street, who is Jesus really? And you said he is gentle and humble in heart. You know what? I think Jesus would be honored by that, because that is what Jesus says about himself. So, Jesus invites us to come to him if we labor or if we're heavy laden, if we have burdens, if we're pushed down by life. He promises to give us rest. He invites us again to take his yoke upon us and to learn from him. Why? Because he is gentle and lowly in heart. But then he gives us another promise in this passage. He says, and you will find rest for your souls. It's actually the same promise with a little bit of addition to it. You won't just find rest, but you will find rest for your souls, for your very being, for that part of you that just dictates your entire being, your souls, not just for your bodies, but rest for your souls. See, the truth is that life is filled with things that weary us and burden us and weigh us down. But Jesus, in his understanding, in his accessibility, in his approachability, invites us to experience and find rest in him because he is gentle and lowly in heart. And then he wraps it up this way. He says this, For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Remember the yoke, that bar that attaches two oxen together so they can work together to plow a field, right? That thing that unites those two things. That his yoke, when we unite ourselves to him, it is easy. Now, there are two things in this passage that are in this little section that are important. The first one that we have to notice is the word easy, because when we think easy, we think what? Easy, right? It's not hard, right? It's going to be simple, but that's not what this word means at all. In fact, Jesus doesn't tell us that if we attach ourselves to his yoke that our life is going to be painless and rid of all hardship. That's not what he's saying at all here. In fact, the same Greek word that is used here for the word easy is used by Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, and it's translated as the word kind. When Paul says, be kind to one another. So what this means here is that Jesus is saying that his yoke is that he lays on us as his disciples is really a kind yoke. You could even translate it as Jesus saying, my yoke is kind. It's not harsh. It's not heavy. It's not a problem. It is kind. Have you ever been around somebody who's just kind? It just makes you want to be around them more. Jesus says that his yoke is kind, but he also says that my burden is light. The burden is just the teachings from Jesus about how we are to live. That's the burden. How we are to live as his followers. But what he says here, when he says that his burden is light, he's saying that his burden is really a non-burden. That it's not meant to weigh us down. It's not meant to complicate or make our lives more difficult. And Jesus' point being here is that we, as burdened and weary people, can take on his kind yoke and his light burden. And he will give us rest. Why? Because he is gentle and lowly in heart. And here's what I think this means for us as we kind of move forward in this series. Because Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart, it means that he doesn't cringe when we come to him, or cringe when he comes in contact with us. When we reach out to him, he doesn't go, I know what you did. I know what you did last summer. He doesn't point out all the things that we've done wrong. He doesn't back away when we move in his direction. Why? Because he is gentle and humble or lowly in heart. He's understanding. He's accessible. He's approachable. That's who Jesus is, really. Well, throughout this series, one of the things that I'm going to give you each week is a verse to memorize or a passage to memorize. And the reason why this is so important is because I don't want us just to learn some things about Jesus, but I want us to get to know his very heart. And the way we get to know his very heart is by transforming the way we think. And the best way to transform the way we think is to embed into our brains God's word. And so I want us to memorize some passages. And the first one I want us to memorize is the one we've been looking at today. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's the first thing I want you to do in light of what we've talked about today. But for the second thing I want you to do is I just want you to spend some time this week just meditating on the fact that Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart. Just rest in that fact for a little bit. Take some time each day just to close your eyes and take a deep breath and just remind yourself of who Jesus is. Remind yourself of his heart, that he is gentle and lowly in heart. And as you do that, I think that you're going to start to change how you think about Jesus. And maybe over time, that heart that Jesus had will start to grow in you, but we're not there yet. Okay, right now we just want to learn about Jesus's heart. And I just want us to start to meditate and think on this and kind of swim in this kind of current of the sea of Jesus's heart. And I think the more we do that, the more clear we are, or clearer we are, or truthful we are about our understanding about the heart of Jesus, I think the more open our hearts are going to be to the work that he wants to do in us. Because let me tell you something we're going to discover throughout this series. Those things, whatever they are, and we all have those things that we know we shouldn't be doing, or that we know we should be doing that we aren't doing, all of those things that we think would cause Jesus to back away or to turn his back on us or to move away from us a little bit, those very things that we think would push him out of our lives are what actually draw us to him, or more accurately, draw him to us. Think for a minute. Why did Jesus come to the earth in the first place? I mean, we're told that everything was created by him and through him, and because he's the creator, he can do whatever he wants with his creation. He could have said, you know what, I made everything, have at it. You guys have fun. I'll be back when when everybody's gone, and we'll start all over again, right? I mean, that's what Jesus could have done, because let's be honest, if we're left to ourselves, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? But he doesn't do that. What Jesus does is he steps out of a perfect heaven and into our perfect world. He moves in our direction. He doesn't ask for us as sinners to move in his direction. Why? Because we can't. Paul says that we were dead in our trespasses, and dead people can't do anything. Dead people need someone to act on their behalf, and that's what Jesus does. He steps into our messy. He moves in our direction. We're going to see that over and over again. And the reason why Jesus moves in our direction is because of his heart. He is gentle and lowly in heart. Why don't you close your eyes for just a little bit? I just want you to take a moment now to meditate on that. Imagine that Jesus is standing in front of you and he says, I am gentle and lowly in heart. And when you meditate on that, I just want you to respond however you feel the Spirit leading you to respond. Maybe it's just with gratitude. Maybe it is with humbling yourself before him, getting on your knees and acknowledging who he is. Maybe it's with just worship for his greatness. But Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart. I just want to give you a few seconds to kind of meditate on that. Jesus, first off, I love this invitation, and I'm so grateful that you invite all of us who are weary and heavy laden or burdened or weighed down by ritualism or religiosity or any sort of stuff, that you invite us to come to you and to take your yoke upon us and to align ourselves up under your teaching. But you invite us to do that because of who you are. You are gentle and lowly in heart. This week, would you just remind us of that over and over again? Would you just, that simple little phrase, that you are gentle and lowly in heart, that this afternoon, tomorrow morning, and at lunchtime tomorrow, and on Wednesday, on Friday night, on Saturday when we get ready for bed, or whatever it is, that you would just remind us over and over again of who you are. You are gentle and lowly in heart, and we want to praise you for that. I praise you that you are understanding and that you are accessible and that you are approachable, and I thank you that you moved in our direction so that we might know you. Looking forward to what you're going to teach us over the next few weeks as we look at your heart. Would you just transform how we think about you? And more than anything, help us to know you more so that we can become more like you. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.